What if Padme exposed Order 66 to the Jedi and Senate? Let's explore the depths of it in the video. Padme shuffles through the barracks of the 501st, ignoring some of the strange stares she gets from the clones, who are curious as to why she is here. Whenever they ask, she simply says that she is there to pay her respects to the troops. That satisfies most of them, especially on such a sad occasion. As she reaches the end of the barracks, she sees the cause of such an event: the body of ARC Trooper Fives, who was recently killed after allegedly attempting to assassinate the Chancellor. Although most deem the ARC Trooper a traitor, most of his brothers have had a hard time believing this, and held this memorial service to honor him. Padme politely mingles with familiar faces like Rex before making her way towards Anakin, who sits alone in one corner, his expression in deep thought.
Anakin, you seem troubled. I know this is a difficult time for you, but your men need you.
It's complicated. I knew Fives. He was one of the best, a loyal soldier and a good friend. It doesn't make sense that he'd do something like that.
Exactly. You respected him, and so did the others. But now, they say he tried to kill the Chancellor. But is it possible something else was going on?
I think the clones are just worn down from the war. Fives went through a lot. He just lost his friend. Maybe he just snapped. This war has been going on too long.
Maybe. But this wasn't just any trooper, and not at random. Fives was investigating something. He told people there was a conspiracy, a threat against the Jedi from what I read in the reports. Don't you think we should at least take it seriously?
Padme, he was saying strange things. Something about an inhibitor chip. And when I found him, it was as if he was unstable. He was spouting conspiracy theories. It sounds like paranoia, not a real threat.
But I've seen how far people will go to cover things up, even when they know it's wrong. Especially when they know it's wrong.
Anakin's shoulders slump slightly, and he finally looks up at her. For a moment, there was a flash of doubt in his eyes, but it quickly fades as Anakin looks tired.
I just don't think it's worth digging into. Not right now. Maybe in time.
Padme sees the exhaustion in her husband's eyes. This incident took a lot out of him, and she realizes he's not in a good place to be looking into this. Gently, she places a hand on his shoulder and lets him relax. Although the thoughts of everything that's happening leaves Padme unable to shake off that feeling and decides to look into it herself. After the funeral, Padme decides to take a closer look at the investigation Fives was a part of before his death. The report was filed by Shaak Ti, who explains that Fives recently lost a friend, who, before dying, killed a Jedi. The cause was supposedly because of a corrupted inhibitor chip. These chips were embedded in all clones, which was something no one but the Kaminoans seemed to know about. Fives himself had his chip removed, and this was supposedly what caused him to try and kill the Chancellor. Padme first tries to talk to Halle Bertoni to ask about these chips. She explains that they are to control the clones' aggression and emotions to prevent them from snapping during the stress of battle. However, she refuses to hand over any data, as she claims they contain sensitive information and trademarked technology. Meanwhile, Fives' chip was supposed to be sent to a private lab for study, but the chip never actually reached the facility, and whenever she tried to figure out where it went, she couldn't find a clear answer. It was simply lost in transit, and she suspected this was intentional. Even Shaak Ti can't tell where it ended up. What's worse is that the incident with Fives now left the Republic much stricter with monitoring their clones for signs of dissent. Shaak Ti herself warns that the Kaminoans are keeping a close eye on the clones in active duty, so trying to get a fresh chip is near impossible. Padme is now certain there is more to this story than what they claim, but to prove anything requires having a chip. She realizes that she must find clones outside of active duty for this. Later that night, when even the busy streets of Coruscant begin to quiet, Padme pulls her hood up close to her head and heads towards Coruscant Prison. With her access codes, the guards do not question her and allow her to head to the private visiting area. A few moments later, a pair of clones enter, though neither one is armed. Instead, they are wearing prison jumpsuits.
Greetings, gentlemen.
I never thought I'd have a senator visiting me. What are you doing here, Senator Amidala?
I'm here because I need your help.
She takes a step closer.
I'm looking into something. Something important that could affect the clones.
You want our help? I'm done doing the Republic's bidding. This is the first time I've felt free in my life. No orders, no chains. Sure, I'm locked up in here, but at least I'm not a slave. I don't know, Senator. I've always followed orders. Breaking the rules, especially for something like this, it doesn't sit right.
I understand, but this isn't about the Republic. It's about your brothers. Fives thought something was wrong that affects all clones. If you help me, you'd be protecting them, giving them a chance to make choices of their own, like the ones you've made here.
Slick's eyes flickered with a hint of interest, and Dogma's unease lessened.
Dogma, I know it's difficult, but if you're afraid of breaking orders, think of it this way. Uncovering the truth might prevent you and your brothers from being forced to break orders that go against your nature. Orders that you'd regret.
All right, Senator. I'll help. For Fives. Fine, I'm in. But let's get one thing straight. This isn't for the Republic. This is for us.
In the medical bay, later, Slick and Dogma sat side by side on 2 examination tables, nursing the bruises from a scuffle they'd gotten into with the other inmates to gain entry here. Medical droids bustled around, scanning their injuries. But as they finish their diagnosis, the door opens and C-3PO enters and waves at the medical droids.
Oh dear, I never thought I'd be aiding in such clandestine activities.
He reaches for the medical droid's datapad and alters some of their figures.
Pardon me, sirs, but I believe we're here to handle a sensitive operation.
C-3PO hands the datapad over and sets the droids with a few shaky but precise commands. As the droids prepare to scan for the inhibitors, C-3PO supervises them nervously.
Oh, do be still, please. This requires the utmost precision.
Moments later, the droids locate and remove the inhibitor chips from Slick and Dogma. The 2 clones exchange a silent glance as they take in what was just pulled from their minds, a part of them they never realized was even there.
Now I must, take these devices to the lab for analysis.
He takes them in his hand and quickly waddles off, leaving the clones to wonder what they just pulled out. Shock T recommends a good lab within the city that can study the chips and decipher the codes inside. For a few tense days, Padme continues going about her duties. However, part of her suspects that they might know about her investigation. Palpatine in particular questions her several times about what she's been up to. Although she manages to evade his questions, she knows she can't do this forever. Soon, she receives the answers from the lab, which sends her a copy of everything the chips are supposed to do. Her eyes widen as she reads the full extent of these clips. It goes far beyond just controlling the clones' emotions. There are controls on their thoughts, and her eyes widen at the mention of hidden commands. She plans on fully exposing these to the Senate during the next meeting. But in the meantime, she creates copies of it to send to trusted sources like Shock T and Anakin. However, her husband is out of the system, leaving Padme alone as she prepares her speech in her apartment. Suddenly, the walls tremble as an explosion echoes in the distance. Alarms blare, red emergency lights casting a harsh glow down the corridors. Padme glances out the window and sees the unmistakable silhouettes of separatist droid ships descending, launching waves of battle droids onto the streets below. She grabs her communicator and contacts Bail Organa.
Senator Organa, we need to evacuate immediately.
There's already one en route. Meet us at the designated transport bay.
Padme hurries out, taking her speeder towards the designated bay. But as she zips through the air, an assassin droid is waiting for her. As she turns a corner, the droid steps out from the shadows, its red eyes locking onto her.
Target identified. Padme Amidala.
It opens fire at her with its blaster rifle. The first few shots go wide. Padme fires her blaster instinctively, her shots barely slowing it down as it advances. Her speeder moves closer to the street as she gets ready to jump. Just in time, too, as one shot manages to strike her speeder's engine. Her speeder veers out of control, and the senator leaps out just as her speeder bursts into flames and tumbles into the darkness below. The droid advances towards her, readying his rifle. Padme grabs a nearby metal chair and hurls it at the droid, hoping to buy herself a moment. It sidesteps and lunges, gripping her wrist with crushing strength and forcing her blaster from her hand. The droid raises its weapon to finish her, just as a blaster bolt slices through its arm. The droid jerks, releasing her, and another shot pierces its head, sending it sparking to the floor. Breathless, Padme looks up as two familiar figures step out from the smoke. They are dressed in the red armor of the Coruscant Guard, but the clones lift up their helmets, and Padme's eyes widen.
Slick? Dogma? What's going on?
We slipped out in the chaos. Didn't take long to figure out someone put a price on your head. A couple of bounty hunters broke out with us. We overheard them talking about going after you. You can't reach the evacuation site. That's probably where they're waiting.
All right. Master Shakti set up a safe house in the lower districts. I didn't want to have to use it, but it seems like we have no choice.
They move quickly through the dim corridors, slipping past droid patrols and bursts of laser fire as they descend into the lower districts of Coruscant. Finally, they arrive at a nondescript building tucked into the shadows. Slick taps a hidden panel, and the door slides open, revealing a modest yet secure room stocked with supplies and medical equipment.
Thank you.
Guess we aren't completely done with our old jobs after all. Still, it feels good to be back in armor. For the Republic. And Fives.
They settle in as the battle rages around them. Luckily, the war is mostly in the upper areas, leaving them in relative peace. But the two clones remain on edge, constantly keeping an eye out for bounty hunters. Even after the battle comes to an end, both clones remain wary, refusing to let the Senator leave until it is time for the Senate to reconvene. Even then, both troopers remain by her side as she heads to the Senate building. Her appearance is greeted with surprise by the Senate, as when she failed to show up in the evacuation area, they had assumed the worst. But Padme assures them that she's fine, and provides her evidence on the inhibitor chips. She shows how the chips gathered from Dogma and Slick remain unaltered, and proceeds to display all the secret codes and commands listed within them. These include orders to hunt down fugitives regardless of collateral damage, removing the Chancellor from office, and killing the Jedi. This revelation shocks the Senate, who all murmur anxiously. This is only made worse by reports from Obi-Wan and Anakin about how the clones were ordered by Count Dooku. The knowledge is enough to spur them into action. A full investigation is ordered. Padme takes a moment to celebrate this success before being escorted home to rest and prepare for her impending birth. When she arrives home, Anakin is waiting for her. Her husband is shocked to learn about this and can hardly believe it. He sits down on the couch and shakes his head.
I can't believe this. So all this time, Fives was telling the truth.
Annie, whoever did this spent years plotting it. You can't blame yourself for not being able to unravel it in a few days.
It doesn't change the fact that Fives died.
No, but I suppose it does make getting to the bottom of this more important. So, at least he didn't die for nothing.
As this happens, the Chancellor manages to keep a calm demeanor, although he is secretly seething. He quickly tries to control the situation. Even with this information, no one suspects that he is the Sith Lord, so he still has a chance at achieving his plan. He starts by pinning the blame on the Kaminoans, like Halle Bertoni, and orders their arrest. He already has plans to phase out the clones, so this shouldn't be an issue. He simply needs to delay the investigation long enough. Using his powers as Chancellor, he discreetly sends more and more delays that prevent the investigation from fully going through. At the same time, he begins to corrupt Anakin, sending him visions of Padme dying, not just in the hospital bed, but also at the hands of bounty hunters, to woo him to the dark side. This is made easier by the fact that he remains distrustful of the Jedi. He even begins to hint that Order 66 might not be so bad, and is a check to the Jedi's power. For a while, Anakin remains doubtful, but the Chancellor can trick him by making it seem like they're on the same side. He appoints Anakin as his representative on the Jedi Council, claiming it is to achieve further cooperation between them during their investigation, so when the Jedi refuse him, it leads Anakin to believe that they are being uncooperative. Meanwhile, Padme remains under close watch due to the threat to her life. Dogma and Slick are pardoned and allowed to serve as her bodyguards alongside Shakti. But because of Anakin's duties, he sees little of her. When he does see Padme, he can't help but worry about her, as she's surrounded by two former traitors and a Jedi, and silently questions whether they will truly protect her. Palpatine continues to fuel these thoughts in his head, silently whispering to his ear and promising him the power to save Padme. This only gets worse as Padme's birth reaches its advanced stages and requires Padme to remain in the hospital, so Anakin sees even less of her. As they prepare to depart, Anakin confronts Shaak Ti.
Anakin,
She has 2 former traitors protecting her. Do you expect me to believe they'll put her life first?
Dogma and Slick are loyal to her, Anakin.
Forgive me if I'm not reassured.
I sense that it is not just them you are questioning.
I've had my doubts about the Jedi, I admit.
Your anger is clouding your judgment. It won't help Padme if you let these thoughts consume you.
So what? I'm supposed to just do nothing while they risk her life?
All I ask is that you remember your duty.
To the Republic, I know.
And to Padme. You care for her dearly, this I know. I will not ask further questions, but I will give you some advice. To love her means giving your support and trust, not suspicion. The last thing she needs is your frustration.
Anakin looks away, her words stirring a painful conflict within him. He glances once more at the door, but nods his head. As they depart, this leaves Anakin alone with Palpatine. Despite what Shaak Ti tells him, Anakin cannot shake off the confusion and doubts he's been feeling since, and Palpatine decides now is the time to strike. He reveals that he does have Force powers, and offers to teach Anakin, even showing him abilities that will help him save Padme. For Anakin, this is shocking news, and he nearly kills Palpatine. But the Chancellor reminds him of the threat to her life and how he needs this power. Anakin leaves the Chancellor's office, thinking of everything he just heard, trying to make sense of it. Part of him wants to accept, but he recalls Shaak Ti's words and how Padme needs his support and trust more than anything. As he runs those thoughts through his mind, one thing is clear. He needs to be there for her. With his duty complete, Anakin reveals everything that happened to Mace, who confronts Palpatine instead. Meanwhile, the Jedi takes a ship to Padme's hospital. As he arrives, he immediately realizes something is wrong, as he sees how deserted the hospital is. There's no sign of people, but there are tables knocked over and furniture shattered. When he comes closer, he begins to see blaster holes and scorch marks as he nears Padme's room. Just outside, he sees the room is blocked by some beds and gurneys, which are turned into makeshift barricades. From there, Shaak Ti stood from behind, blocking shots from an advancing assassin droid, while Dogma and Slick remained as well, firing at them. Behind the droid, Cad Bane, Aurra Sing, and Bossk poured fire from behind the cover. As the droid advances, it tries to wrench the barricades apart and loosen some tables before Shaak Ti's lightsaber slices its head off. She then hurls the droid back towards Bossk, who snatches it and rips the torso apart. Snarling, the Trandoshan lunges forward, claws flashing as he pries the medical carts away to open a gap. Shaak Ti prepares to cut him down as well, but she's forced to redirect her attention as Aurra Sing tries to snipe her. This leaves the two clones to try and grapple with the Trandoshan by smacking him with the butts of their rifles. Anakin rushes into the fight, lightsaber in hand. The first to notice him is Cad Bane, who hurls an electric bolo at him. Anakin manages to slice it apart, though the wires get tangled in his arms, allowing the bounty hunter to fly up and kick him. This leaves Shaak Ti to face Aurra Sing. The bounty hunter is careful to keep her distance, firing sniper rounds or shooting poison darts without getting in range of her blaster. Behind her, Cad Bane grapples with Anakin, giving him a pistol whip, but this only angers the Jedi, who lets out a few swings at the Doro's back. That the Doros ducks under. After one vicious slash, Cad Bane ducks low and strikes Anakin with a taser, sending electricity coursing through him. Anakin screams and throws his head back, letting Bane reach out for a baton and strike him across the face. While the first few blows send him reeling, he slowly begins recovering as the electricity has less effect on him. Suddenly, Anakin grabs Bane's face, lets the electricity course through Bane, and makes him break off. He shoves the bounty hunter against the wall. Meanwhile, Aurra rushes forward, pouring fire with her pistol just as she reaches for a grenade and tosses it into the room. As Shaak Ti blocks her attacks, she notices the explosive. She grabs one of the fallen beds and drops the mattress over it, absorbing the explosion. At that moment, Aurra Sing kicks her, and the two grapple with one another, trading punches and kicks until Anakin comes from behind and drives his lightsaber through her back. Bane takes this opportunity to try and fly away, but Shaak Ti is faster. She hurls her lightsaber and it impales him, dropping him to the floor. The clones are also finishing up their bounty hunter too. Bossk lunges forward, his claws slashing through the air. Dogma rolls out of the way, firing as he moves, the blaster bolts scorching the tiles where Bosk's feet hit. Bossk snarls and launches himself after Dogma with terrifying speed. As he approaches, Slick slams the butt of his rifle across his face and tries to shoot him, but the Trandoshan leaps up and tackles him. Slick leaps onto the hunter's back, frantically jabbing the tool into his scaly neck, while Dogma dips and dodges the frenzied claws of Bosk's panicked swipes. Eventually, Dogma lands a few stabs of his own as the bounty hunter begins to gurgle, his eyes rolling into his head. The final few sticks send the Trandoshan to his knees, and then to his face in a heap on the ground, leaving the clones panting in the aftermath. Padme stirs slightly, obvious to the chaos that has just unfolded outside her door. Anakin lowers his lightsaber, his focus returning to her as he steps into the room, now assured that for the moment she is safe. The birthing process thankfully continues without any issue, and Anakin is soon holding his new children. Padme is smiling brightly at the sight, and it's made even better by Mace's report claiming that they've killed Palpatine. With all the evidence Padme presented, many are willing to believe that Palpatine was the Sith Lord this entire time. This allows Padme to begin speeding up the process and having the inhibitor chips deactivated. For her service in exposing them, Padme is asked to become the new Chancellor. Meanwhile, Anakin is offered the rank of Master for his help in exposing Palpatine. But Anakin rejects this offer and leaves the Jedi. Having fulfilled his role as the Chosen One, he decides to go for a quiet life, raising his kids and assisting Padme as an independent agent, using his skills and Jedi training to help keep her safe and make the Republic a better place. That's our theory. The Star Wars universe is a galaxy filled with exciting stories and possibilities, and we love exploring them. If you want to accompany us on this journey to a galaxy far, far away, then please like, share, and subscribe to our channel.